Next up, we have our enterprise panel. So we'll be hearing from some industry leaders about how they're transforming their various industries using generative AI. We have our moderator, Jeremiah Owyang. He's going to come up here. He is the CEO at Catalyst Companies. We also have Jan David Yanda Erlich, who's a COO at Weights and Biases. We have Deepam Mishra, the head of Gen AI at the SME team at AWS. And then we have Kavitha Prasad, who is the VP and GM of AI strategy at Intel. And last but not least, Babin, who is the CEO at Zero Systems. And our last panelist, Rajan Sheth, who's the VP of marketing at Cohere.
I was a little worried that nobody was going to show up for this panel. Look around. This is pretty amazing. I want to start off with some industry stats. I'm your moderator, Jeremiah Owyang. I've been a serial entrepreneur here in Silicon Valley all my whole career. Very excited to be with you. A lot of news has happened. Just yesterday, PricewaterhouseCoopers announced a $1 billion fund for enterprise AI. A few weeks ago, Bloomberg launched their own Bloomberg Chat. And we can see that every corporation in the world is lining up. This is a huge opportunity. Here's a stat. I was just talking with Alex, and we were talking about what percentage of the world's data is behind an enterprise firewall. Shout out an answer. What do you think the percentage is that the world's data is behind the firewalls? Somebody said 90%. What else did I hear? 40? That's a big range. Yeah, you guys, some people are hallucinating. It's 80%, according to Alex, which that's the stat that I see. So GPT-4 and the other models, yeah, they have the lion's share of the data and the media, but most of the data, which is gold, we gotta stop calling it oil, by the way. Please don't call data oil. That's really horrible. Call it gold. Most of the gold is in the enterprises. And that's what we're gonna talk about today. What an esteemed panel. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have them introduce themselves. We'll set up some definitions. We'll talk about why it's important. And then we're going to dig into 4 key areas: security and privacy, accuracy and dependability, support and reliability. And then we're going to break into some use cases by industry and vertical. So let's start at the very end. Jan, please introduce yourself, a 1-minute introduction, and we'll go down the line.
Sounds good. Hi, folks. So I'm Jan Erlich. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Weights and Biases, and we're an ML development tools platform. We essentially help ML practitioners build ML models.
Thank you. Alex.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Babin, CEO and co-founder of Zero Systems. We're orchestrating an operating system for enterprises to create, run, maintain AI applications and put them inside a security perimeter and make it reliable, dependable. Basically, all these guys are building, we make it reliable for enterprises.
Kavitha.
Hi, my name is Kavitha Prasad, and I am VP and GM of AI Strategy and Execution at Intel, and I'm so glad to be here today. We look at defining a vision for Intel that's beyond silicon and components, going up the stack and bring meaningful compute and AI solutions to the enterprise and other under the vertical markets.
Can you just quickly talk about the project that you're working on? Is that okay?
Definitely. We are working on a generative AI platform solution for enterprise markets on how do you bring this meaningful compute to the enterprises. To Jeremiah's earlier point, 80% of the data is behind the firewalls. The companies hold the data very close to their hearts. And now if you want to deploy AI solutions, how do you deploy it within the security perimeters of these customers is critical to actually deploying AI for these enterprise customers.
Yeah, and so it's enterprise software you're focused on.
Correct.
Right, good.
Hey folks, I'm Rajan. I'm VP of Marketing and Growth at Cohere. And Cohere builds their own foundational pre-trained models similar to what you've been using like ChatGPT or GPT-4. And there are very few companies who are doing that. And the founder of Cohere himself was the creator of the T in GPT that you saw in the slide of one of the papers at Google Brain. Super excited to be here.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deepam Mishra. I am a senior advisor to machine learning startups at AWS. My role is to work with amazing startups like Cohere and many others who are both building the foundation model layers and many other tooling and innovations which are vertically relevant as well in the world of generative AI, and very excited to be here.
Great. So let's talk about the data that is sitting inside of corporation. Let's start with the gold, and this is a question to the panel. Is most of it structured, well organized, tagged, labeled, or is it a real big mess? I'd love to hear. This is a grabby for anybody.
I can take on this. So 80% of all the corporate data inside the security perimeter is unstructured. It's emails, documents, activities, anything that is being generated daily. And the problem with this data is not just that it's inside, that's the nature of it. The problem is that sometimes it's really, really expensive to label that data, and a lot of it is redundant, obsolete, or time-barred. So enterprises sometimes just give up on that data and just sits there like a data swamp. And the way to deal with that data, because we know that it can be fed into the models and you can do magical stuff with it, is to actually label it, but at low cost and systematically. So that's the gold mine for AI.
You had a comment? Unstructured data?
No, I think that's exactly what I was saying. 80% of data is unstructured, and I think there is massive inefficiencies in terms of how you leverage that data within your organization's corpus of your own information. So technologies like large language models are able to help you bring those information and help you get those information based on just natural language.
Great. So I'd love to hear from the panel. Maybe somebody else wants to speak. Does anybody have a working definition of AI for the enterprise, or enterprise AI, or AI business? Anybody want to take a stab at that, or even put a scope around it?
I can give you one metric, Jeremiah, is that to the point that a lot of data is behind these perimeters or security perimeters of the companies, is that in the last 10 years, a lot of these companies have invested in actually gathering the data, capturing the data, creating some, a lot of investment has gone behind this data. But only 11% of those investments have actually resulted in meaningful business outcomes based on deployment of AI. That is something to think about. It is that all the AI that we are seeing today is largely consumer-oriented, right? ChatGPT made it so easy for the masses to understand it, but it is still consumer-oriented.
Okay. Does anybody want to try to put a scope around it? So the problem has been set for sure. And this whole, remember like 5 years ago, big data was like our big theme at conferences? We collected all this data, but for what reason? So now we have enterprise AI. Come on, panel, give me a definition.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think there are two different ways I define enterprise AI. One is, like, how can it increase the worker productivity and efficiency overall within an organization? And the second is, how can it minimize the gap between humans and technology? So last time this kind of industry revolution happened was when iPhone was invented or web browser was invented. And as the previous panelist spoke about, it was when Fire or when Wheel was invented. So these technologies don't come very often. And the way we percolate this into enterprise is, how can you make the workers more productive? How can you make the users who are using this technology more efficient, and they want to be able to use this in a way that they don't have to go 10 times deep into a GUI to find that information. They should be able to interact with the data and their own corpus of information through natural language. That's how I define like more enterprise applications of AI.
Let's hear from an AI company for about 20 years. You, Amazon, let's hear it.
Well, I would say the fundamental definition from of enterprise itself has been to how do you produce a good or service as efficiently, as high quality as possible. And AI, the heart of it is to, like Rajan said, is providing efficiency of production. So enterprise AI to me is nothing more than another tool which helps you to at the core of the business, productivity and competitive advantage is to create efficiency of production.
Yes. I know Amazon has the leadership principles. You guys have it nailed down how it aligns the business goals and the leadership principles and customer obsession. I don't know if every company that is trying to do enterprise AI is going to be as focused. They're going to have so many different ways to use it. So let's talk about some of the requirements for enterprise AI. Raise your hands again if you use ChatGPT. Okay, and now raise your hands again if you're worried about hallucinations. Raise your hands if you still use it anyways. Right. See, so that's the thing. That's consumer side. we're still going to use it. And how many people don't care if Dolly or Midjourney creates 4 to 6 fingers? It doesn't matter, right? It's still beautiful and free or cheap to make. But enterprise is different. So let's talk about the requirements. The first topic is going to be around security and privacy. Now, for the big cloud companies, I'm sorry, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, I actually tell big companies that I talk to, don't just give your data to these big companies. That is your gold. That is your gold. You know, you need to think about, is it safe? And this is an important requirement for every company, regulated or not. So panel, I would love to hear from you. What are you seeing in the market from big companies when it comes to data privacy and security and enterprise AI? And let's make sure we have a range of voices. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start maybe with the devil's advocate opinion here, which is you don't particularly keep your employees in the dark about your data as well, because you need them to have access to that data to perform. And I think for me, these large foundation models, we have to treat them almost like employees as opposed to tools.
Whoa, say that again.
I think we have to treat these large foundation models almost like employees as opposed to tools.
That's a topic for the next panel on ethics, so that'll be interesting.
Well, I think it ties to data, right? Because essentially, you don't hide the data from your employees. They need access to the data in order to perform their tasks. And I think you actually need to give relevant and valuable data to these models in order for them to perform their tasks. And I think the vendors of these models are just going to get smart about it's not viable for them as vendors to make like illicit use of corporate data for their own benefit, because they know that that damages the vendor relationship with their customers. And the customers, there's going to be a benefit to giving access to these models to the data so they can perform better tasks. And the analogy that I would go to is in the cloud, right? When the cloud vendors came out, everybody was like, oh, I'm never going to run things in AWS or GCP or Azure. That's scary. It's in somebody else's data center. I'm going to run the thing in the server underneath my desk. And guess what? We look back 10 years later and like everyone's running stuff in the cloud because it's actually more efficient, better, more valuable. And the truth is Amazon has access to all that data, but by contract and for their own benefit, they don't access that stuff because they know that would damage that relationship with their customers and completely break that trust. And I think the same is going to be true for these large models.
Okay, thank you, Jan.
I wanna counter-argument that. So
let's fight. I want to hear.
Yeah, not fighting, but actually taking a bit opposite direction. So a lot of those large enterprises we talk about, especially regulated industries like insurance, healthcare, they don't own the data. It's not their data, the data of their customers. And in order to give that data...
Did you actually read the terms of service?
Well, CISOs do, right? So chief security officers do. That's their job. And in this case, getting this data outside of the security perimeter and putting it somewhere so an organization can access it, it might be really, really critical. And we have a lot of clients who are actually saying, no, we're not going to be using any of those new technologies until we have 100% assurance that none of that data is going to be leaking somewhere or whatever going to be happening to it. So there are multiple approaches. For some industries, that's absolutely normal. But some industries like legal, finance, insurance, healthcare, that might be no-go.
All right, so let's make sure we're contrasting this to other enterprise software. So obviously, many enterprise apps run in the cloud. How is AI security and privacy different? And maybe you could talk about some of the things that you've been trying when it comes to like metadata?
Yeah, I'll give an example. Is there any VCs here in the room? Raise your hands. Okay, not many. Anyways, I'll bring up an example. So one of our clients, Fortune 500 company, they are processing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of capital calls and distribution notices each month for funds and LPs. That data is very sensitive. And they require the AI system to work inside the security perimeter and also be very, very reliable. I know it's the next topic, but in this case, as example, both the leakage of that data might be very damaging, but also the quality of the output or the processing really, really important. So if you're a VC and your capital call goes to someone with an extra zero in the number, that might be a problem. So those kind of things for some industries, as an example, when both the quality and security of the data is really, really critically important, that sometimes stops the development or adoption of AI technologies, but sometimes actually it speeds things up.
I'd love to hear from AWS. Like,
I'd probably say that the AI, the data context in AI is a bit more confusing because a lot of times I would say people do not fully understand how the data gets used, both in terms of training the model as well as in terms of how it's used in flight and inference. I think first thing is to understand how these models work. I think there's a lot of fear, some of it's real, some of it's unfounded, about how your data could be used by the model providers to train their models or use that.
Samsung learned that lesson.
Yeah, so well, it's you got to read the commitments. As I think Yanda mentioned earlier, the larger model providers as well as the cloud providers, they all take data extremely seriously. The privacy is always, and there's no difference here. I think you can go with if you read the contract carefully, I think you can probably manage these things. But yes, there are inadvertent uses of data, which I think is really on you if you can make mistakes. I think AI makes it easier to make mistakes without knowing. I guess that's probably
I think that I would really want to draw the difference between like generative AI and just enterprise cloud. But the difference here is a Samsung employee uploaded private code of a beta product into GPT-4 to get feedback on the code, and then it got absorbed into the training model and was released to other people. So that is a difference, right? It's like social media in a way, right? Social computing in a way. It's social computing. Yeah, so I think that's one thing that we need to draw that distinction on.
Yeah. And that's a great example. And Jan mentioned that we should treat models, like large language models, like our employees.
That's very good.
And I completely agree with that, though. Even within employees, there are different levels. Your sales manager in Nebraska probably don't have enough the same access as your CEO in the headquarters, right? So ethical walls and all the components and kind of structuring the data for access is really critically important. So we can't treat everything like one piece.
Yes, would you like to chime in, please?
So one thing I would like to also highlight, Jeremiah, is we talk a lot about models, right? But when you look at deploying these models for enterprises is not just the models itself. You need to operate across the infrastructure layer, across the data layer, across the model layer, and bring all of this together in a meaningful compute, and it needs to fit into the application layer seamlessly for it to get deployed.
Yeah, we have not discussed that yet.
Right? So that is the key thing, is about when you're creating these models, how general purpose models need to come together with domain-specific models is the key in deploying it, because sometimes these domain-specific models can be trained within your security perimeter, can be combined with these large models. Together, you create a model that's actually going to work for your business outcomes.
Rajan, bring us home on this topic.
No, I mean, just building on what Kavitha said, I think it's about like deploying the models, right? So a lot of these enterprises that come to us, we don't want to send our data through APIs outside our perimeter. And what's the answer? They are all deployed in different clouds. So one of the things that we do now is like we are cloud agnostic, and we are actually deploying these models within their own infrastructure rather than having them to send their data. We are sending our models into their data infrastructure. So they're more comfortable in terms of using that models and training in their own data set, so that now they know that their data, it's not even visible to us as a foundational model company, and we're not going to be training on their models, and their models are not going to be used for a competitive or for a competitor to generate the same things. So it's the way you deploy it, the way you secure it, I think it's more relevant now versus the type of models that you build.
Thank you. This panel is great. Okay, another pop quiz for the audience, and we're going to move on to the next topic and talk about accuracy and reliability. Okay, let's see. Shout out if you know the answer. GPT-4, if you compressed all of that text data, which by the way is the totality of published human knowledge, all of the published digital human knowledge, if you compressed all of that down, how large is that file size? Pop quiz. I'm sorry, what did you say? 30 GB? We're not that smart. Okay, anybody else? 10 petabytes? That's a huge range. Okay, last guess. Let's see if anybody gets it. That is right. 1 terabyte. It fits on your phone. We're not that smart, after all. But that's not the rich media, obviously, right? So that's all the text data compressed. 1 terabyte. If you don't believe me, ask GPT. It'll tell you that. Okay, so next topic. We're going to talk about accuracy and dependability. All right, so this is important. So I have a prediction that in 5 years, every single corporate web page will have its own avatar on the front page with natural language processing, multimodal, and it'll be accessing a database. Big brands are very cautious, especially financial brands, healthcare, regulated industries, not to expose false information. People could get hurt, lose money, or die. Let's talk about this requirement. We already heard from the audience, they don't care if their photos have 4 fingers. They don't care. What's the difference with enterprise AI? Love to hear from the panel. Does it need to be accurate?
It absolutely has to be accurate, and I'll give simple example, like fingers and whatever, it's not that relevant, but imagine you're using a bank, and a bank uses the amazing AI technology, and the best of the best, state of the art, but then there's a 3% chance that your money will go to someone else, randomly. Would you use that bank? Probably not.
Sounds kind of like blockchain.
Yeah, might be. So accuracy is absolutely the most important thing for enterprise AI after security, right? And of course, the cost of ownership, that would be the third one. But I believe that we are right now at the dawn of AI. It's like basically can be compared with the flight of Brothers Wright. We flew like 300 feet. Fine, great, we're all excited, we're in the air. How about Boeing's 777? That's where we need to be. That's the enterprise. Boeing 777 is the commercial flight. And right now we're just flying in this nice and amazing machine made out of dried sheet, scrapped wood, and duct tape. So, and we need to make it accurate, dependable, and scalable. And in this case, the humanity will start getting the benefits out of it at the scale we, I hope, deserve.
All right, let's have a little debate. Real quick, percentage, how accurate should it be? We actually had a little bit of a debate on our prep call. How accurate should this be? The models, the data.
I'll make a statement that first, it's actually, accuracy is probably the most important part. 100% at an application level for a lot of applications, certainly, but doesn't have to be a base model or the model level itself. So I think our point was made that you got to think about the application holistically and not try to assume the technology is not perfect, never will be perfect. But there are use cases and applications in which you can make it work perfectly for that. So I think for the entrepreneurs in the room and the startups that I work with, those are the guys who are figuring out where those opportunities are, and there are plenty of them right now. And we'll continue to build more and more accuracy boundaries. We'll keep shifting the boundaries, but I think that's kind of how I look at it.
Kavitha.
So again, to his point, it is dependent on the market or the segment you're deploying it for, right? In certain cases, 89%, is it acceptable? Yes, it's acceptable probably because getting to 100%, that last 15%, is not easy. If anybody says, I'll get to 100% accuracy, think again. But again, in some companies, like I was talking to this automotive company when I was in my previous startup, they want repeatability over accuracy. Even if you tell me 80% of the time, if your accuracy is 80% and you're telling me a cat is a dog, it's okay. But 100% of the time you tell me it is a dog. Don't tell me it's a cat or it's a human in another case, right? Because in the automotive industry, that repeatability is extremely critical when you're making decisions when you're in your autonomous vehicle. Mm-hmm. So it is dependent on which market, which industry. For example, I tell you this is go buy a Louis Vuitton bag versus a Prada bag. The consequence of failure is not very high. So your accuracy, it can take a hit. But in an autonomous vehicle, that accuracy can kill a person on the road.
Okay, so we heard 100%, we heard variable because due to cost. Jan, you're itching here.
Yeah, I think again, it depends on the use case, but I think that the analogy of treating it like an employee instead of a tool is an interesting one, right? Like how many of you have employees? How many of employees have made a mistake? Have you fired them on the spot immediately for that mistake, right? You have to think about the system as a holistic system, and if the more powerful something becomes, the more there's also a risk that it sometimes makes errors. And building the guardrails to catch those errors, teach the system how to improve the next time, are also part of the solution.
Yes.
If you expect 100% performance, you're going to restrict yourself to very simple things that do those things accurately. If you want something powerful, you have to take some degree of non-determinism with it in that degree of non-determinism, you have to guardrail it. I think that's the only way to move forward there.
Any comments on dependability? This ties into the next topic, also around support. That's a requirement for enterprises in many cases, right?
Yes, it is. And actually, I wanted to add to the quality and accuracy level. We think about AI as an isolated mechanism, but actually it's always it should be working together with the human. And in this case, the machine might be providing 90 in the best case level of accuracy, but when you combine it with the human in the loop, that's where the magic happens. So we should not rely on AI doing things on its own. It's always human in the loop, as Jan said, also reinforcement learning, making mistakes, fixing it, but also using it as a guardrails. So it's really critical. But dependability is also important because a lot of enterprises right now are reluctant to use AI for the business and mission critical components of their business. Exactly because they lack this fittings or this mechanisms that will help them to get AI reliable, dependable, and scalable. So that's
I had
critical.
the honor to interview Garry Kasparov, multi-grandmaster, at an IBM event, of all places, on stage. Guess what we talked about? AI versus humans, right? By the way, this is really important to note. He won the first game against Deep Blue. He lost the second one, and that's the one that IBM took to the press. So they're actually tied, and he requested a rematch. It was not given to him. So I just want you to know that is important. And the thing he shared with me, Alex, is that the most powerful chess player in the world is a human and a computer together. And he calls that a centaur, right? Half horse, half human. I don't love that, but it's Garry Kasparov. He can say whatever he wants, and I'll agree. All right, so I'd love to hear from the panel, some more around dependability and support. How is that different from the consumer side when it comes to AI? Yes, please.
Yeah, I think for me, it's more about like how does it increase productivity at your workspace? So I don't know how many of you have read this paper from MIT that came out like a couple of months ago. What they did was they took 400 people and then they split into two sets. One set got access to ChatGPT, another set didn't. And what they found out was the group that got access to ChatGPT, the volume increased in terms of productivity by 37%, and the accuracy, or in terms of how the results they have produced, increased by 27%, and that's huge. So when we talk about accuracy and when we talk about dependability, I think it's both together. Like we're calling this as like, it's not 5% or 2%, it's like an industry revolution size of increment that we are seeing right now. So anything that we see is more important than trying to figure out whether it's 100% accurate or dependable. And agent assist is something that they're going to be working hand in hand. It's not going to be, everything is going to be done by these large language models, generative AI. It's going to be in context of a human working with them. So that's how I think about accuracy, dependability, and support overall, working all together.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing is that we're not going to lose a bunch of human jobs? Is that what I'm hearing? All right, that's for the next panel also.
Tasks are going to change, not jobs.
The tasks will change, good.
The key is predictive plus the prescriptive methods need to work together for business outcomes. That's where dependability comes in.
Said.
I'll give a very interesting example. I have a startup which does, it's a fintech startup. They support financial advisors in helping give advice for stock picking, for example. And we were just talking to their management, and they said, we don't want these systems to be consistently biased, or what if they start giving the same stock over and over again? And then the manager's boss stopped him and said, wait a second, what's the single biggest problem we have today in our human advisors? Are they not already biased? And around the room, everybody said that that's the biggest bias the stock advisors today have. So I think part of the problem is we are looking at some of these technologies as being perfect from day one. I think we are starting to figure out what the limitations are, and as humans we learn what to work it out. I mean, we are also used to seeing Google search spit out 5 pages and pick what we want. But we want the one answer we get from a Q&A, from a generative system, to be 100% perfect. I think these are early days. We'll have to figure out how the technologies are, and we'll all develop behavioral mechanisms.
We're still training it. Yep.
I think typically when people think about AI, they use 3 parameters: better, cheaper, faster. And I would say right now we're in a stage of cheaper and faster. We still need to get to better stage, especially when we apply it to business processes, because sometimes people are better, sometimes AI can enhance those processes, and I agree with Jan. Tasks are going to be changing, and AI will not replace people. AI will replace people who are not using AI.
So that's a profound statement. So there is a term used in the AI startup space. I host a startup event in San Francisco called the Llama Lounge. You can see it on my tweet streams. You can feel free to join us. We had 150 people come out and startups demo, and they believe there's a term they use called AI first, where everything they do is they say, rather than me doing it myself or I ask somebody else, I try to get the AI to do it first. Do you guys agree with that, or is that too far past some of the conventional wisdom you just shared in the panel?
I mean, I've started doing that when I get a project where I want to do research. I ask AI large language models to help, and I find like I'm not just cut and pasting the answer and sending it to my teammates, but it does a fair amount of the work that was rote and annoying and slow before, quickly and easily, and allows me to spend more time on the higher level creative stuff of synthesizing that data and making good sense of it for business use. And so, frankly, I think I'm trying to retrain myself to think that way, to treat this system as a very intelligent assistant that works all the time and is happy to like help me in my tasks. And I found like humongous productivity gains from changing my patterns that way.
AI first is definitely the right way to think about it, but one thing that we sometimes need to remember is also, it's what do we ask, right? Sometimes it's not, because the intelligence comes in how you're positioning the questions. What are you asking of these AI systems? If you don't ask the right thing, you will not get the right thing. And when you don't get the right thing and you deploy that, you're in for a surprise. So it comes down to how you're thinking and how you're asking the right questions.
For a while, right? Like prompt engineering is a limited time skill because autonomous agents should be able to pick that up because it should self-learn. All right. By the way, you guys are so smart. Thank you. Let's go on with the next topic. Let's talk. Thank you. You wanted to talk about the application layer. Let's talk about applying this. So we've been pretty theoretical. We talked about why is this important. We talked about gold is the data, and we talked about security, privacy, accuracy, and dependability, and support. Now let's talk about actual applications. We could break this down. Let's do business unit and then we'll do industries. So which business unit do you see deploying AI in the enterprise first? I just want to hear real quick answers, just one department, then we'll talk about it. Just pick up the mic and say it.
I think it's the customer support is the one that's going to be the number one.
All right, next.
IT department.
IT department.
I would say financial.
Like finance department?
Finance and legal.
Okay.
Just to be different, R&D, and that's true whether you're building software or drug discovery or any of these things.
That's right.
I'll also say customer support, but I will also say customer success and support.
Okay, that's a wide range of answers. By the way, there's another thought that every product will be an AI product. Every product will be an AI product. Even this stand will be an AI product. Not because there's any tech in it at all, but you'll use AI to model it, to build it, to manage the supply chain, to do the customer care, to do the marketing, to do the sales. AI, this is an AI product. It's a dumb product, but it's AI. So, all right, so you see a wide range. Which department do you think will be the most successful? And let's start a conversation. Where are you seeing traction, actual real traction? Yeah.
I think all of them are going to be successful, but AI is mostly visibly effective right now in the industries where a lot of knowledge work is required. A lot of data and knowledge work, so processing data, analyzing, reporting, that's typically very time consuming. That's what Jan was saying. Creating something and doing the research requires a lot of time. And that's what AI can do effectively, scalably, and relatively easy and with low level of mistakes, because humans always come second and process or post-process the data.
Okay, knowledge workers. Okay, so not a department, but a function, a task. Okay, next. Where are you guys seeing traction?
To earlier's point is that the semantic knowledge discovery or generation around that knowledge discovery is where you will see a lot of the adoption happening.
Could you give an example? Where are you seeing?
Say, for example, you are consulting or an advisory company, or you are creating content from, multimedia content, where you are bringing different multimodalities to create content generation. Those are the areas where you will see the adoption faster.
Okay, great. Next.
I would say that most of the functions where the human task revolves around a semantic search, but example would be, it depends on accessing, analyzing, and synthesizing information across lots of different types of data, and currently the human ability to search them fast in context and summarize them quickly is, I think, just like we haven't even seen what's possible with the new solutions. That's where I think most people are so excited. They can see the immense, complete inflection point almost in how fast they can make sense of the data, which so much of it's been unused in the enterprise. I think that's an unsolved huge problem.
Yeah, I heard this quote, like, you can find a needle in a needle stack. That humans couldn't do that before, right? It's like complex sets of data analysis in real time. Yeah.
I think the other aspect that we haven't talked about that is kind of akin to the consumer use case but used in enterprise is in the assist of option generation for creative endeavors. And so that's true whether you're generating marketing copy, images for ads, research topics, bullet points, etc. And again, I rarely see cases where the data or the response generated by the models is used verbatim as the answer for the business. But I do think I see many cases where the options that are generated, the additional options that are generated by the AI systems are then used as like the starter dough for human further refinement, and then that improves the quality of the end result.
Mm-hmm. Alex.
I wanted to add something to this. Actually, right now we think about knowledge workers as the biggest time suck for them is research and content generation. Actually, it's not. Surprisingly, it's working with software. All of those legacy.
I thought it was like all the Zoom meetings.
Yes, like CRMs, Zooms, everything. So a lot of time is being consumed by software, and we take it for like as it is. But actually, AI will help us to communicate and work with the software without actually opening a web page or opening a software itself. So those tool formers that will predict what we need to do, the next stage, the next step, and perform that for us without us actually doing that, and knowledge workers, that would be the next biggest step. Transformer is not just about text, it's about actions as well.
Story time. I spent time with the Microsoft 365 team a few weeks ago. I did a tweet thread on it, and it went absolutely viral. It was like over 1 million retweets and views. But essentially, I saw how they're going to integrate Copilot into every single Office app. So obviously, there'll be LLM in Microsoft Word, and you might write something, and then it'll say, make me a PowerPoint, and it'll automatically create and generate a PowerPoint that looks pro that you can take to the boss. Then you go into Teams and you have your meeting, and then you deliver that PowerPoint, and then it's capturing what people are saying and reacting to it, and grabbing sentiment information on and what do people agree or don't agree on. And then it creates and then it will send an email with all the action items that will happen. So all these things work in a virtuous cycle, multimodal. I believe that will absolutely happen. As you know, Microsoft invested in OpenAI. So that's a really powerful thing to see. But maybe we can skip the meeting part because the agents should just go for us. So let's talk about that. Autonomous agents are the rage right now amongst the startup scene. The autonomous agents, who's familiar with what that means? Let's see, do you know what autonomous agent is? Okay, let me define it. So in the AI startup space, autonomous agents are emerging now. And essentially they are like the baby step towards AGI. It's a small bot that will do, it'll first you give it a task, a prompt. You can say, I want to go to Hawaii, start the process. And then it will assign itself tasks. It'll generate all the things to do. Say, I need to do research, I need to find out which airlines, what time of day, how many baggage, who's going, what type of car do I need, what type of restaurants. And then it will go to those websites and start to get all those things done. And it'll create loops and create a checklist and do it all on its own. So the question is for the panel, what type of applications for the enterprise might use autonomous agents? Do you see this as something? Are customers asking for it? It's the cutting edge technology in AI right now.
Go ahead.
So what you call autonomous agent is what we call is an enterprise intelligent agent.
Say it again, please.
Enterprise intelligent agent.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, whether they have access to three things. One is the large language models that it was trained on. The second is your entire corpus of information within your enterprise. So your CRM is connected to that. Your HR systems are connected to that. Your sales or your marketing systems are connected to that. And then you can ask any questions that you want to it, and it would respond to you, and then you can say, take this action, as what you mentioned. And that's exactly the future of where this is going within an enterprise application. It's not just writing creative copy. It's about helping you with every task in your day-to-day, within every applications within your system.
Wild, right? Everybody has an army of workers.
It's all great, but we're still circling around in the same area of text generation and content generation. Think of it as a next step. What is the next task you need to perform? And the agent would do it for you automatically, knowing what the end goal is and reconstructing the steps in between now and what you need to accomplish. And it might not be the text generated, it might be a phone call made or presentation created or something. So I think the next step for those independent agents, intelligent agents, would be predicting not what the next token is, but actually predicting what the next step or next action you're going to be taking. And we're already seeing that happening in enterprise. We're building some of those, and it helps people to actually get things done much faster without being interrupted by other things, because agent works in a behind the scenes.
All right, well, we're going to take two questions from the audience. Does anybody have a burning question? Right here. What is your question? Say your name. No pitches, please.
No pitch. My name is Dhaval, and by the way, the question I have is on the cat and mouse. So, like in computer security, right, the hackers versus the solution folks, right? Same way over here, in cases where there's plagiarism. So, there are tools to find out whether there's plagiarism. Where do you see that cat and mouse game going? And by the way, you should have said 1 terabyte iPhone. On that question, earlier question, what is the size of the thing?
What did I say?
1 terabyte.
Who wants to take that? We'll have one respondent, please.
I can take that part of it. I don't think we need to worry about plagiarism. I think OpenAI released a tool around figuring out what was generated by large language model. I think misinformation is the one that we need to be worried about more, and figuring out guardrails around how we can avoid misinformation. Plagiarism, like someone copying a student essay, I don't care. Sure, you should do that. But I think spreading misinformation and bias within this technology, I think this is where regulations, so this is where there needs to be a broader conversation around how can large language models be more robust along these things.
Thank you. Our last question. Your name, sir?
My name is Harvey Singh, and I'm with Instancy. Now that we have 1 terabyte of all the knowledge compressed and every kid can have it in their pocket, now what is the role of education system? Because what we need to train the future generation knowledge workers so that they can harness this knowledge and really be creative with it. I'd like to hear your comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. Maybe I'm old enough that I remember when teachers were terrified when you had pocket calculators. And, kids ended up actually, probably the kids who grew up with pocket calculators are smarter than the kids who ended up without the pocket calculators because they spent more time on higher level problems. I think the same is going to be true here. I think it's not about trying to teach people the same things that they could ask some large language model to answer for them. I think it's about teaching them, now they can go, I had to memorize capitals of countries. That just seems like a waste of brain space now that could have been filled with something more useful. And I think the same is going to be true now. There's a whole category of things that students can just rely on the system to help answer, and then they can spend their time solving much more interesting, much more difficult problems, maybe in collaboration with these large models, things that we never had the time to do because we were out memorizing capitals and multiplication tables.
Jan, I don't think you wasted time. Now you will not confuse Austria and Australia. But I believe that, I'm old enough to remember that there was no Google and I had to take bus to get to the library and spend 2 hours doing research and then 2 hours back home. So I think it's a time of imagination now. So we got all those tools,
That's
and
good.
it
I like
sparks the imagination, and that's where education should be focusing, getting people.
A time for inspiration and creativity. The time of tasks are over. I invite the panelists to stand up for your applause. Please give them a round of applause. I know they're going to get mobbed by question. Panelists, if you could exit the building so we don't disturb the next panel. Thank you all for your time. You've been amazing.